Now, with that said, let's start the show tonight. First person I'd like to introduce you to is somebody that's been here before, Mr. Tom Farrell. Tom, as you know, is building a great scene on his model railroad. He built a couple of structures on it, and now he's going to build another one. So, Tom, welcome.
Thank you again, Jim, for having me, and thank you, Phil and Pat, for your support and the other support members. My last two presentations focused on building what I'm calling shanty town. These are scratch-built structures that reside on a river, and they're arted up here, but this was the first one. This was last week's. I'll be showing you how I put on this deck this evening, and then this is a third structure that I basically have completed, and I'll show you how I made that. These are all scratch-built and not kits, and they're all for my rustic buff and old Gothic On30 railroad. This is the reboot of the railroad. The last one was 15 years in the making and one afternoon to take it out. So here we go. This is the structure I was working on last week. This is now basically complete. When I place it on the railroad, I'll add people, figures, additional detail on the decking. But I'll show you how I did the decking. It's relatively simple, and some other photographs. This is the underside. Now that's scale 2x10 material, but it's obviously not prototypical length, but you're not seeing the underside of this model. So I just took strip wood approximately a foot long and super glued it in place. And then looking down, see we're a little out of focus here, but I added 2x6s one at a time till I built up the decking. And again, this is the finished model. These the posts are nothing more than dowel rods that are weathered with first a razor saw for graining, and then they're India ink placed on them, and a few acrylics and some green paint to represent algae and moss and things. I put a little of the green on some of the deck boards as well. That's a pretty effective model. I think I'm most surprised with the roofing, the shingles. I mentioned this last week. I had these shingles in my possession for several years. They're laser cut paper. I never thought of them to use them. They didn't look right, but turns out they're probably some of the better looking shingles I've ever used. Just looking at either end of the building, for interest, I put shutters on one end, and I put a patched up broken window on the other, just for a little detail here. Just adds visual interest. You can see the effect of weathering here. Again, as I'll explain in the next model, this is a very simple technique that gives you outstanding results. I mean, that looks pretty good to me. That I never saw it quite that close up. But basically, the idea is with a razor saw, you scratch that wood and put a wood grain on it. Then you stain it with alcohol wash, and then add some acrylic paint, scratch it a little bit more, and it takes no time. It just looks great. So this is the left and right again. You can see the decking. I used what I call variation in color here. It takes no time to go back and restain some of these. Initially, I stain everything gray. Then I go back with browns and other colors of gray and stain individual boards for variation. On this one, I haven't gone back with my X-Acto knife and rough these boards up, but I intend to do that. I'll put knot holes in here. I'll cut the boards. I'll make it a little more weathered. Another view. That's RS Laser. They have lots of products from N scale to 1/32 scale. Really a nice product. These signs are right off of Google search for 1920, 1930 signs, and then I simply bring them into PowerPoint, print them out on regular paper, cut them out and glue them on with Elmer's glue. And here's the third and final structure for the river-based shanty town bait shops that I'm making. So this one only took me a week. One positive thing about doing a weekly show, it used to take me a month to do these structures. Now it takes me a week. Thank you, Jim. So the technique is the same as the last two. I start with a plywood base. Then I use scale clapboard. I, as usual, have just a loose and general plan for the building. These are, this is a Tichy door here, double door. These are Grant Line windows and a Grant Line door. They're on this blue tape because I don't like to hand paint these anymore. What I do is I just take them out to the garage and I hit it with a rattle can and paint them white. I demonstrated the technique last week on what I do, but basically I like these chalky paints from Krylon. And then this particular model, I sprayed this with a white, not shown here, but I sprayed them all with a white Krylon chalky white. And then I went back with India ink and basically stained them. This is a buildup of the structure. As I pontificate over and over, I overly reinforce my structures with 1/4 inch. This is poplar, this is hardwood that I happened to spy at Lowe's, and it was inexpensive, so I just bought a bag of 1/4 inch by 1 foot long poplar, and I just frame the inside of the building with it. Makes it very strong, very stiff. I typically paint, as everyone knows now, or should know that's been watching the show, I paint everything with flat acrylic black. These are these craft store paints. They're the flattest black that I've ever found. I paint everything flat black because I don't detail the inside of my structures. So when you look in there, you don't see anything. So this is the technique that I use for just about all my models. I principally only use these inexpensive craft paints now. They're, for the most part, non-toxic, and they don't give off any fumes, any outgassing. They don't stink like the old Floquills. I paint normally we'll call this obnoxious yellow. I use a base coat. In this case, I wanted it to be a little off yellow. So I painted the entire piece here yellow, then I let it dry overnight. And the next day I painted it with a white cover coat, I'll call it. And then I mentioned before about scratching the surface. This is that scratch pen that I bought. You can get these at Micro Mark. They're currently out of stock, or Amazon, as I learned. And they have replaceable, they come in either brass or steel tips. This is like a wire, multiple wires here. And I just scratch the white cover coat off the model, enough here to show some of the yellow coming through. And when you scratch it down to the wood and you add your gray, or it's black India ink and alcohol, but it comes out gray, When you add your gray alcohol wash, it penetrates into the wood that you've opened up with this scratch pen. You get a nice weathered effect, as you saw earlier on that previous model. And then if you want to add more color, you can go back and dry brush the base color on there. And it's just a nice effect. It's a simple technique. I mean, that you want to do a world-class finish, that's all there is to it. This is demonstrating the roof. This is a piece of 1/8 inch basswood with the 1/4 inch reinforcement here. Actually wanted to use plywood, but I seem to have run out of thin plywood, so I used this basswood. But maybe I'm anal about this, but I just want these structures to last forever, I suppose. So I put double 1/4 inch material across that. Then I painted it black, but not around the perimeter because that's where the glue goes. Then I just put some glue in here, super glue, and set it in place. Next up, I took Elmer's glue and I just squeezed some Elmer's glue onto the roof. And then with a paintbrush, I spread it around. Then I took some fine cinder ballast and I sprinkled it on the top of the roof. Once that was dry, I went back and I weathered that with various grays and just washes of acrylic paint, just so it wasn't stark black cinders. Here you can see some of the details. See the scratching from the that scratching pen? I've seen this many times on models where you see on the side of a bait shop fish. So I sketched with my micro mark square and just eyeballed. I made an F. I just worked left to right. The most difficult letter to sketch out was the S. Once I figured that out, I just hand painted it. And here's those windows. You can see how they were originally chalk white. And then with the black alcohol wash, I toned them down into a gray. You see, if you look in there, you really can't see anything because it's black. I went back and I trimmed the very top board perimeter around the roof, and the baseboard I painted white. You can see the beginnings of the decking here. We'll get to that later. And here's the model coming along. I again I found this sign, bait shop, and on Amazon, and it's for a real, call it decorative life or decorative sign that you can hang in your home. The neat thing is you can custom put in names, and then when you go to proof it, I just copied the drawing and I had my own custom sign. So you can put whatever name you want in here, and this is my brother and his wife's name. So Pat and Phyllis Bait Shop, but it's kind of neat to I was playing around with a bunch of signs. You can put custom lettering in there. Now here's a perfect example. This decking is coloring called grayish, whatever that is. But that's, again, that's my base color. So I'm gluing these boards on one at a time, trying to make random joints. One of the nice things about scratch building is how the building literally comes alive before your eyes. I've always wanted to do, I'll show you, a canvas roof on the side of a building. So I built this structure out of, these are 2x8s, scale 2x8s, and these are 2x4s, and these are vertical 4x4s, and they're just painted white. I started, you won't actually see this up here, but I went back over this with a black alcohol wash. There's my canvas roof. What that is a paper towel. I put Elmer's glue on these rafters, just ran Elmer's glue down the rafters and along the length here. And then I cut the size. I just draped a unfinished, uncolored paper towel on there, a heavy duty paper towel. Then I let it dry. And then I went back and I painted it with acrylic paint. And all of my structures, when I'm completely done, everything gets sprayed with dull coat. So that'll seal it up. It's somewhat fragile, but it looks like canvas. It costs nothing. Here, more or less, is the finished structure. You can see how that off yellow, remember how obnoxious that yellow was? It's very subtle here. And I will have additional weathering on these. I haven't finished the decking here. Some of these boards aren't finished, but I started some of the weathering process. All three structures that I featured in this series have different size decking, different colored decking, and all the buildings are different and different roofs. So there's no commonality amongst them. Even these piers are different sizes. Those aren't finished yet either. Now that I have all three structures complete, scratch-built structures, and there's a fourth you haven't seen that's a carryover from the old layout, I want to show you where I envision putting them and how I've made a change in the design. So this is the Salt Creek River on the Rustic Buff and Old Gothic Railroad in front of my covered bridge. That looks like a traffic jam to me, even though these buildings would be set back into the hillside a little bit. It's just not working. The river's not quite wide enough, and we're obstructing the view of the key structure of my old Rustic Buff and Old Gothic. This was the signature structure, and I was blocking the view here with this scheme. So it was actually my wife that suggested that I not do this, and that I allow for a free view of the scratch-built covered bridge that I spent months on making. This is all temporary here. These are temporary colors. This is simply sculptamold in there. Just eventually we'll get cast plastic. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to change the course of my river, and I'm going to carve this foam out here. So the next week, I will show you how next week, it's my intention to redirect this river, place these structures into the hillside, and build a dam behind this covered bridge, a concrete dam. There's the three scratch-built structures. There's the fourth you haven't seen. That's a carryover from the old layout. The other advantage to having them up front and personal, because the right below the photograph here is the fascia. There's a lot of detail, particularly on all of them. Be ashamed to hide them up the river. So stay tuned for next week's redirection of the river. So any questions from anybody?
I have one, Tom.
Yeah.
It's Pat here. Those windows on the side of that building.
The
one
middle
you just
building.
showed us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were they double hung windows set on our side?
This is the first time I ever used windows. They're supposed to be on the side like this. They're double hung on the side. They're a grant line window, but they're meant to be. See the.
Yeah, I thought so.
I never actually liked those type of windows, but I thought I'd try it on this structure.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they're designed to go that way.
Okay.
Thomas Lair McDonald here. I love these little structures, so much character. But my question, the drawing that you have, that you showed at first, is that your handiwork at art?
These, you mean?
Yes.
No, the truth is I am an artist. I can paint, I can draw. But these are just computer images drawn into an art program.
I thought so. I like it. It's quite neat, but when I saw the signs too added to it, I thought, thank you.
I do have the ability, but no, I'm afraid they're just computer generated.
It looks good. Thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
Thomas, Charlie Tusek here.
Uh-huh.
Just want to say, great buildings. I think each one of those is worthy of its own scene, and I think your wife was right trying to separate them. I think it was a little busy, but each building is beautiful. Good job.
Thank you. They are neat little buildings. In particular, I like this one on the end here. But no, and there's going to be a series of buildings right behind them. Going with the theme of shanty town, there'll be at least three or four behind these three. But we'll see how much room there is after I put in the river.
Tom, let me ask you this. The model that you just built,
Yeah.
how much cash money do you think you have in that?
Maybe at the most, maybe under $20.
So guys, I'll tell you one thing, we keep hearing about the high cost of model railroading. It really doesn't have to be. I mean, you can do some beautiful work without having to spend a tremendous amount of money. You may have to learn some skills you don't know right now. You may have to spend a little time making a lot of mistakes. But you can sure do some beautiful work and not spend a tremendous amount of money. So Tom, thank you so very much.
Thank you guys for having me, and I look forward to next week. Thank you.
Let me ask a question of everybody here. I ran across something the other day that I had never heard of before, and I'm writing an article about it. Has anybody tried to create a simulation of glass windows by painting basswood?
I have one, Jim.
How did you do it? If you don't mind me asking? Because I've never heard of anybody even trying to do something like that.
The model's behind me. Just one second.
All right.
YouTube.
There, those are painted windows. They're not glass.
I'll be darned. Thank you.